Hi there, this is Jen, and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm participating in a Back to Basics card hop, and there will be lots of other participants on this hop, so I encourage you to follow along and check out all the videos and leave some love for everyone. And when I was creating this video, I had to kind of think about what a basic card is. And it's probably a little bit different for everyone. So I just thought I would go ahead and show a few different techniques that I think are, pretty basic card making that don't take a lot of supplies or fancy jigamahoos. So for the first card, I went ahead and grabbed my Catherine Pooler inks in Lemongrass, Bellini, and I think it's Party Dress as well as Twilight. And I'm just taking some acrylic stamping blocks and stamping up the blocks with the ink, and then taking my water sprayer and spritzing that stamped block and then setting that down onto a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I don't know if this is called stamp blocking or color blocking. I'm actually not really sure what it's called, but it's a super easy technique. All you need is some stamp blocks and some ink. The dye-based ink is going to be your best bet since it reacts well with water. And then when I finished that, I went ahead and cut that down to a small little panel, and I took a stamp that I purchased from Joann's. So this is a Hero Art stamp that I purchased from Joann's, and I just added the pretty flower as well as the sentiment that says "Wishing you well." And I did tie a piece of, I believe it's jute or something like that, around the top of the card, and I'm going to use my fun foam to pop that up a little bit. And then I will adhere the entire card panel to my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. And then I just added a few little embellishments, and that is it for the first card. It did not require a lot of supplies. So for the next card, I'm going to go ahead and use some pattern paper. And if you're like a paper hoarder like me, then you probably have tons of pattern paper around, and it seems like no matter how many times I go through it to try and destash, I still have a huge amount. So pattern paper is excellent for basic card making because there are so many layouts out there on Pinterest that you can use. You can do what I'm doing right here, which is I'm taking an image from a piece of pattern paper and fussy cutting it out and laying that out on a card. You can do paper piecing. There's just lots of things you can do with just pattern paper. And if that pattern paper also includes sentiments, that is awesome as well. This pattern paper that I'm using did not have any sentiments, and so I grabbed another stamp set that I purchased from Joann's, which is a Hero Art stamp set that just has some sentiments, and I stamped those out and fussy cut those out. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put together the card. Another great thing about pattern paper is a lot of times when they are double-sided, they coordinate really well with each other. And so like for this card that I'm making right now, I'm using both sides of the pattern paper. So one side had the floral and the other side had this kind of geometric look on it. And so it was really easy. It takes all the guesswork out of trying to match up pattern paper. And so I've just assembled that. I've popped up my flower piece, and then the sentiments from that stamp set that I mentioned says "To a perfectly wonderful human being." I also did add a few embellishments as well as some black ink splattering. For my third card, I am doing some ink smooshing, which is something that is so super fun to do, and you definitely do not need a lot to do it. So I'm just using a piece of plastic packaging, and I'm going to go ahead and use my distress inks in 3 different colors of green. And so I put some of that distress ink down onto my packaging, and I am going to first lightly just push it. I'm not pushing down with my hand. I want the water beads to make a pattern on my Bristol Smooth cardstock, and so that's why I'm not smushing the ink really. I'm just kind of tapping it onto the paper. But I do throughout the card do some actual ink smushing where I'm pressing down to get more of a solid spot of ink rather than kind of that splattered look. And although I have never tried ink smooshing with a pigment ink, which is resistant to water, maybe that's something that should be tried. I don't know. I don't know the effect that it would have, whether the smush would look the same, but in general, using a dye-based ink, because it reacts with water, is probably your best bet. But I think I might experiment a little bit and see what ink smooshing with pigment ink will do. I'm sure the ink will bead up. That's interesting. I might just try that. But after I've done my ink smooshing, I am using those same 3 colors that I used. And I don't remember which green colors. I think it's Cracked Pistachio, Twisted Citron, and I do not recall the darker green color. But I use all 3 of those to stamp up this Christmas tree. And then I do some gold embossing with the sentiment. And then I'm just going to take my fine line glue and some little embellishments and adhere those. And that will complete that card. So really easy to put together, super fun to do. For my next card, I'm going to do some heat embossing as well as some ink blending. And I'm going to use some Lavinia stamps for this card. So I have this, a good size sentiment that has a bunch of encouraging words on it, as well as these kind of like little bubble stamps. And so I went ahead and I prepped my cardstock with my anti-static bag and inked that up with my Versamark embossing ink. And then I'm going to use a white embossing powder to cover that ink embossed stamp. And for the little bubble stamps, I am not using a block. I'm just taking it and kind of pushing it into the stamp pad and then adding that to the card, and then I heat emboss that as well. And the colors I'm going to use for my ink blending are Lemongrass, Sauna, Tiki Torch, Bellini, Tutti Frutti, and Sangria. These are all Catherine Pooler inks, and I am going to ink blend them in the order that I just set them down. So I'm starting with the darker color, which is Sangria. I'm going to put that on the end of the card, and then I'm going to take the Tutti Frutti. And when I ink blend, I always go back over with the previous color. So I did the Sangria and then Tutti Frutti, and then I went back over with a Sangria again, just to try and get the best blend possible of those inks. And I am using my foam blending tool instead of the blending brushes, just because a lot of times when I want a darker color, I think the foam works a little bit better at putting a little bit more ink down, as well as giving me a darker color. But I'm kind of curious, at what point do you get re-inkers? I probably need re-inkers. I don't have any re-inkers for any of my inks, just because I don't want to have to spend the money to buy re-inkers, as well as having to store them. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of my inks need a little boost in the ink pad. So let me know in the comments, do you keep re-inkers, and at what point do you know that you need to use it? To finish this card off, I went ahead and splattered it and then added the word you, as well as a black Nouveau drop, and that finishes that card off. For my last card, I'm using some die cut pieces. So I keep all my die cut pieces in these plastic envelopes, which is how Close to My Heart used to store their stamps. I don't know if this is what they currently use. I bought a lot of stamps used in the past from Close to My Heart, people selling their stuff. And so I happen to have a bunch of those folders, which are super handy for storage. So for my card background, I have taken a piece of cardstock and I have scored it every 1/2 inch all the way down the card. And there you just saw me, I just creased the card along those score lines to give me a little bit of a better visual crease. And then I'm going to try and create kind of like that weathered wood background. And so I am using pumice stone and weathered wood in Distress Inks. And I'm just taking a blending brush and just trying to go over to define those lines a little bit. And then I'm going to, and I did that in pumice stone, and then I'm taking the weathered wood, which is kind of like a blue tint, and go back over that to try and give that kind of wood background look. I adhered that panel to my card, and then the die cut that I chose to use, I went ahead and popped that up with some foam tape. And then I grabbed a sticker, a collection, and this is from Simple Stories. I added a few sentiments as well as some little embellishments. And that finishes this card off, as well as the series of cards for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you check out all of the others that are participating. There's lots of awesome talent along the way, and maybe you'll find somebody that is new to you that you want to subscribe to. As always, if you like this video or found it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for joining me today and spending some time with me, and I hope to catch you next time.